Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Well, we need to quit meeting like this, I'll tell you.
I know. Actually, I got in really quick tonight. Sometimes when we end a meeting that we're
All right, I'll
okay,
call. We're rolling. Okay, good. I'm going to call this special meeting of the Land Use Planning and Public Works Committee. Present are all members of the land use. Go ahead, Bill.
And I will call this special meeting of the Town Council Finance Committee. Together present are Councilor Ingalls, Councilor Malone, and Councilor Psalms.
And I'll call the Administration Committee meeting to order. And Andra Engels, I don't know where John Marshall is. I don't know if he has called in. Roxanne, do you know? Okay, and Andra Engels. Andra Engels and myself are here for admin.
Right. So I guess I'll lead off on the to start the discussion going. Bill, please fill in from the finance perspective. Mary or Andra from admin.
Sure.
So we have this draft ordinance in front of us that provides some tax relief for farming. We looked at this at the last meeting of the Land Use Committee last week, and the bill was present as well, and there was some possible additional discussion that had to happen. So we had made the recommendation at that point to call this special meeting of the three committees together, so we could kind of move through this expeditiously, I guess is the best way to put it, in order to support a November 1st deadline for the farmers to be able to apply for these tax reliefs. I will say that from, I guess I'll open this up. So from planning and from the land use, I guess I'm going to make a motion to remove from the table or take off the table, to remove from the table the motion that was tabled at our last meeting to open this dialogue back up. So I'll make a motion to remove from the table the draft ordinance for a proposed ordinance providing for property tax exemption for farm buildings, an additional exemption from farm machinery in the town of Ledyard is contained in the draft dated September 2nd. Do I hear a second from land use?
Second by Councilor Sibilia.
Thank you, Tony. So for land use is now removed back on the floor for discussion. At this point, I will open the floor on the land use perspective. And I will also invite members of the Finance Committee and Admin Committee to also join in on the discussion as well. So I'll start off by saying further review of state statute and looking at where we have drafted the ordinance. I think we may have some significant changes to consider because the way the state statute is currently drafted, and also kind of clarified by finance directors, the assessor's email earlier this afternoon, that currently all the farms who meet the requirements currently have the $100,000 exemption. And the only thing that the state statute allows town council to do is provide an additional exemption of $100,000 for farm machinery and an additional $100,000 of abatement for structures that are 100% solely used for farming activities in accordance with the state statute. I'm not sure if anybody else would like to comment if they read the statute the same way that I do. But based upon that, I'm thinking that there's some significant changes we would need to make to this ordinance to match what's in state statute.
Yeah, so this is Councilor Psalms. I'll comment. And our tax assessor confirmed that there is already a state mandated town funded exemption for farm machinery for up to $100,000. So that's not something we have a choice over. We already have that tax liability. So in my mind, the the buildings exemption will cost the town an additional $11,500 or so. But we are already paying for farm machinery in terms of lost tax revenue. So I originally was very much in favor of an ordinance that also provided an exemption for farm machinery, but given that we already have one, I'm not so inclined to add to that. As I read the statute, and it's pretty clear, if you read it carefully, the statute says there is an exemption for farm machinery, and I'll skip over it, but it says all farm machinery and gives some qualifications. And then it says any municipality upon approval by its legislative body may provide an additional exemption from property tax for such machinery to the extent of an additional assessed value of $100,000. And any municipality upon approval by its legislative body may provide an exemption for farm property tax for any building used actually and exclusively in farming. There's a lot more language, but basically it's saying there's one for machinery for $100,000. A municipality can add another 100 for buildings and another 100,000 for machinery. I'm inclined to add the additional $100,000 for buildings based on how I read the statute now.
This is Mary. Okay, so if we go ahead with that, the farmers who are in the 490 program will already be receiving a tax deferment for their their land tax. Then we are going to add the exemption for the buildings, and they already have an exemption for farm machinery. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, my next question is, why have people chosen not to join the 490 program where they would get a reduction in their taxes? Adriana has checked off a couple of them that don't seem to be interested, I'll say. Any reason? And could they come back later on? And this would add to the tax loss?
In my opinion, I agree, Mary. I think it would be on top of this statute and whatever this, if we pass an ordinance, whatever that ordinance, so it would be, yeah, they would be compounded between the 490 Act, between the current $100,000 exemption that the farmers can have now that are eligible. And then if we pass this ordinance to add an additional tax relief for buildings, they could all be compounded onto each other. That's the way I read it.
So in other words, a farmer, if he chose, has the option for 3 different exemptions from the taxes, his taxes.
Currently, without an ordinance, they have 2. The statute affords them, as of today, without any ordinance in town, the $100,000 on farm machinery.
Right. Okay.
The PA 490 Act would then also allow with the farming, but that comes with certain stipulations from the state that they have to follow certain guidelines, and that might be what farmers are prohibited against, that they don't want to have the state dictate what they can and can't do. I don't know.
Well, the Connecticut Farm Bureau says that it's up to the municipality to define the acreage in a farm. Forest land is at least 25 acres, so that's out of the question.
Right.
But farmland, it's up to the municipality, and we have not designated, as far as I know, what we consider a farm to be eligible for 490.
Interesting. That's a good point. We do not. The only regulations I know of that we have in town that dictate what the size of a farm is our zoning regulations, but I'm not sure if that counts toward 490.
Right, I don't know.
So I'm almost to say, I think this ordinance is gonna have to kind of go back to the drawing board to take all this into account. With knowing that the farms who are eligible already have some exemption that they can apply for without having an ordinance. I don't see any need to push to meet a November 1st deadline to assist when there already is something there. I think this is one of the, not really attacking anybody or saying, but I think this was a good thought, good thing we're trying to move forward to support farms. But I'm thinking we're moving too fast.
Right, but I think if the land is taken care of, the machinery is taken care of, but the farm buildings are not. So we certainly could address that in this ordinance. Tax exemption for farm buildings.
Farm building, right. But also we have to be careful because the current way the ordinance is worded is all farm buildings, but the statute is specific to only farm buildings that are 100% used for farming activities. I also think we gotta be careful how.
But doesn't our ordinance say that?
Yeah, but I'm not sure. But the problem is I think the way our ordinance is, it almost looks like it's 100,000. The way our ordinance is currently read it could be construed to $100,000 per building, not for all buildings.
Well, we could say 100,000 in total.
Right. No, that's some of the clarification. But like I said, I think that there's a gap between the PA 490 requirements and the language in this statute that we're trying to accomplish. I think there's enough here that we're going to need to go back and look at this again. So I'm not really seeing it coming out of committee tonight. That's my point.
Can I interject something quick?
Go ahead, Fred.
CGS 1291C does specifically say for the exemption for the buildings, says such amount may not exceed $100,000 with respect to each eligible building. So it is on a per building basis.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
I was in favor of
excuse me, as far as farms go, in an email with Adriana yesterday, she says that it's the discretion of the assessor to determine whether a property would be qualified for a farm.
So I think we have to separate what this ordinance says from the qualification of a farm, I believe, because the ordinance also says that to receive this exemption, they have to show either 15,000 in sales or 15,000 in sales receipts.
Right.
So you could separate it if you wanted to, but I believe that $100,000 exemption in total is something the town could afford in terms of tax loss. I don't think we want to encourage $100,000 in exemptions per building. That's the kind of thing that can result in unintended consequences.
Right.
Progressive.
You could have a total of $100,000. And that would take care of, the building.
We could do that for this year and then study the matter further. I don't think the analysis we have in our hands today shows what it would look like if, and I'll give you a ridiculous example. Let's say someone with a small farm built, assuming zoning allowed it, built 10 buildings and got $100,000 exemption for each. That's not something we would anticipate. Probably wouldn't happen, but I wouldn't want to rush that dog into the show, if you will.
Do we know what the tax loss is with the land in 490 and the buildings and the state mandated machinery without adding on to that? How much tax loss there is with those three?
According to the assessor's calculations, the machinery alone would only be $3,580.
Okay.
I don't know whether that's what we're currently incurring or if that's an additional. I can't figure it out looking at the spreadsheet.
Now, the way I looked at Adriana's spreadsheet is for PA 490, looks like it's 4709 would be the current liability. If you added the additional $100,000 exemption onto farming machinery, then that would be the additional 3580. That's the way I understood reading Adriana's spreadsheet.
But the tax loss for the 490 was 11,000. I'm looking at tax loss. Adriana's sheet.
Yeah, no,
that if we were to pass this ordinance for buildings only, our loss would be 11,615.
right.
Yes.
With the potential, I think the next column is that in the future, there's the potential of up to 2,800 or 28,000 in loss on buildings. So this is the possible anticipated growth of additional farms that may be eligible. It could go from 11,000 this year to 28,000 in the future.
We're getting a lot of noise from someone's mic. I'm not sure who it's coming from. Fred, it might be yours. There we go. Thank you.
The other thing really quick to note too is on one of those far columns under the machinery where it says amount to max, a tremendous number of them would have a long way to go to get to the maximum $100,000 exemption.
Mm-hmm.
You see those columns, and most of them have 87 to 96,000, 98,000 to go before they even hit that exemption level.
Right.
Right. So they don't have a lot of machinery that's worth a lot of money.
So, Kevin, to your point about getting this done tonight, we're 20 minutes into the meeting. We have another meeting coming up in 9 minutes.
Right.
I'm inclined to think you're right. If anything, I think we should get some more information, get a better understanding of the 490 program. I think we now have a good understanding of the machinery. I believe we have a pretty good understanding of the buildings. All we need to do is some wordsmithing. But the 490 is an unknown for me, and I'm not going to get it in 9 minutes.
No. That's why I said, I think this needs to go back into committee for further discussion. We need to clean this up, see what the impacts of 490 are, and see what we really want to allow for additional exemption above what the state statute currently mandates.
Yeah. Maybe we could do that at the next land use meeting if the finance people came or some of us came and admin came, and if we invited the tax assessor to help us understand what we don't know.
Yep, no, I agree. That's probably a good thing. We can put this on my agenda for my next meeting.
Which is when, Kevin?
Hold on 1 second. What is it?
October 5th.
October 5th. Thank you.
6th,
5th.
5th.
The first Monday of the month.
Okay.
But I think part of what I think we were trying to accomplish with this bill, and correct me if I'm wrong, is already mandated by state statute already. So farms are currently eligible for, at least on the machinery part, to get some reduction.
Correct.
They can still apply by November 1st and get that exemption.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Without us acting on anything at the moment. Like I said, once I read that, I realized, okay, we need to slow back down a little bit. I mean, not that
Yeah,
I want to, belay, but I mean, several of the ordinances that we've recently passed, some have taken, the Airbnb ordinance I used, for example, that was 2 years worth of discussion before we finally came to conclusion on that one. The dog leash ordinance was almost a year. So
yeah.
trying to put together an ordinance,
Yeah.
and I thank you for your efforts and stuff like that, but trying to put an ordinance together in a month and a half to get through just seems too quick.
Also the Connecticut, where I got a lot of my information, is the Connecticut Farm Bureau has a lot of information on 490, and it's very user friendly, explains it, very easily.
I sent the Connecticut Farm Bureau PA 490 guide to Roxanne, and she can distribute it to everybody.
Okay, good.
Excellent. So Kevin, finance is or Mike and Bill, and Andra are gonna have to leave momentarily. So I'm thinking you want to put this back on the table.
Yeah.
And then we'll come to your meeting.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to table this ordinance discussion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tony. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So moved. Motion is returned to the table. At that point, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Meeting is
And
adjourned without exemption. Thank you, everyone.
Finance is adjourned without exception.
Okay. Admin
Thanks,
is
everyone.
adjourned.
Bill, can I just stay on, please, for a moment?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.